is Greenhouse Gas Inventory Officer as position at Rwanda Environment Management Authority. Since we have all them here, of course, we just follow how they present themselves, and every presenter will have 15 minutes. I think it's enough in average. Yeah, it's enough in average. So let us start by David Ukwishaka from Rwanda Environment Management Authority. You are welcome. Please, 15 minutes, then we can also have time for discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you for giving me the floor. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be in front of you to present or to share the work we have done relating to giving the linkage between land degradation and silvopastoralism and how they can be useful while we are adapting to the climate change. And we got to know how land degradation is mostly affected by the climate change. So the work that we have done was based mostly on understanding why there is land degradation. That was the very first key. And of course, land degradation, is very hard to define. You can define in any way, but it is combining with many factors that lead to the land degradation. So we were learning the area we're going to talk about is in Nyagatare. You know the area, most of you. That's where the research is focusing. Thank you. So next slide. Yes, thank you. Giving the little background regarding what you are going to see, our focus is on the savanna ecosystem. Maybe in Rwanda we have savanna, yes, but when it comes to the eastern region of Africa, that's where we find the savanna. The savanna is the region where we find grassland mostly, very sparse trees and shrubs. This is what we mainly call savanna. Savanna is a natural ecosystem. It's not something that is generated by other factors. It is natural ecosystem. And one of the big problems in savanna ecosystem is land degradation. Maybe I'm going to define a little bit land degradation. Land degradation is the reduction of health of the land, mainly caused by, it could be erosion, it could be salinization of land, it could be wash away of nutrient in the soil. This is what mostly we call land degradation. And it is happening mainly to drought, which is linked to the climate change. Giving the fact for you, you can know land degradation, over 75% of the earth land is classified as degraded, which affecting 3.2 billion of people. And it could increase as human activity is increasing in the region, then it could increase and reach more and being severe. And as we have climate change effect, including drought, we'll find that land degradation is going to be beyond our control or reverse. So one of the key issues in savanna, of course, which is leading to land degradation, I can say, is a prolonged dry season. We're now having a very prolonged dry season, which is beyond what we normally experienced. In savanna, there is one important activity, grazing of animals, which is in the region. And in savanna also, we find deforestation, many trees. Already there are many sparse trees. And in savanna region, those trees are washed away or cutted for other purpose. And in savanna, we find unsustainable agriculture. This is what we find. And all the problems are in one way being exacerbated by the climate change. Next. Yes, what is the problem in the region now? First of all, the land use in the region was changed completely. When comparing in 20 years ago, We can find the land use maybe focusing in Matimba and Ngwimiyaga sectors, is the sectors touching on the border of Tanzania and Uganda. The land use was changed completely. In 20 years ago, no settlement was there. Now we find settlement. In 20 years ago, there were no grazing of animals. Now they have been introduced. We have found there were area that was deforested. There is overgrazing, comparing the animal that should be in the region. It is overgrazed. There is a drought. And of course, this was the problem REMA was trying to address. REMA introduced what we call silvopastoralism. I'm trying to explain. Maybe you are familiar with agroforestry, where we find trees in cropland. Now there is what we call silvopastoralism, where we find the trees in pasture, where there is cattle or other animals, and we introduce silvopastoralism. We introduce trees in pastures. This is an adaptation activity that helps us to reverse land degradation, to reverse or to avoid climate change effect. As you see, there is two pictures there. There is one where there is in dry condition. You can see grassland is very dry. And another where there is a tree, which is one tree which was introduced by REMA project, where they introduced a silvopastoralism. So next, what was the objective? First of all, I was trying to understand land degradation. This is very hard to map. To map the area where there is land degradation, it is very hard because the factor that can show us there is land degradation, it is complicated. Unless you do field, you go and measure, you take the soil sample, and of course you cannot do that for the large area, like 2 sectors. It will be hard. I was trying to understand, first of all, were there land degradation that was caused or led by climate change between 22 years ago? I was assessing if the silvopastoralism. First of all, I was assessing the risk of land degradation. Is there land degradation 22 years ago? Second was to understand if the trees introduced in the area were giving a good impact. I was comparing the area where the silvopastoralism was introduced in another area where there were no silvopastoralism. And I was trying to understand, to identify opportunities to scale up the silvopastoralism in the region. Next. Yes, that's my area. The case study was to understand if Iri in Nyagatare, the silvopastoralism, the trees that have been implemented in the pastures are really reversing land degradation, are really help us to be adaptable to the situation of climate change. Yes, that's the area. You can see it is in Savannah region, bordering Tanzania. Next. Yes, what was the methodology to understand the land degradation, to assess land degradation? It is much high complicated. First of all, I tried to understand land cover change. What was the change in the area? As I was said, you try to find what was the change in the area in 22 years ago. I assessed what we call land productivity. Land productivity was assessed using satellite image, of course, where it can show us if the land productivity is increasing or is it declining. I tried to understand soil organic carbon, which is a very, very key. If the soil organic carbon is reducing, we know that there is land degradation. The land is no longer producing. The nutrients are being washed away. Those are the 3 key points that can show us if there is land degradation, to assess the land degradation in the area. And these 3 key points have been suggested by the guidance by the UN, where they agree for all the countries to use those 3 key important factors to understand land degradation. Yes, next. Here there is a flow of activity. As I said, I first understand the land cover, which maybe might give an idea of land use in the area. I assess the land productivity, and also I have assessed soil carbon in the soil. Those 3 key points, when they are merged together, they can show us really if there is land degradation that is caused by drought. Those are the tools that I've used. Maybe I'm not going to spend much of time of all. But of course, those 3 key points, 3 key factors, land cover, land productivities, and soil carbon, are the one that can show us really if the land is being degraded, if climate change is having an impact in the area. Next. The result, you can see those 2 maps, they are really different, the colors. You cannot even imagine that they are the same area. Yes, because the land cover, the land use have been changed completely, almost completely. Cropland was not there in 20 years ago. Now there is cropland. Settlement, there was no people living in the area. Now, you can show in the red there is some people living there now. You can see forests have been cleared for other purpose, for the pasture. And some of the area was in a Kagera now, they are used for pasture. You can see, so you can see the total complete reverse of the land use in the area. This is shown us clearly by using the land degradation based on land cover. You can see there is high much of land degradation, where in red you can see the land have been degraded. And of course, at some point of the area, there was an improvement, and also other area remain stable in terms of land degradation. In terms of land productivity, most of the area have lost their land productivity capacity in terms of generating or maintaining the crops. You can see the area in red, that's where there is that mostly declining of the land degradation, where the land, most of the time, there was settlement that caused the land productivity to be declining. You can do next. Soil organic carbon was not changed much because the cropland was introduced later on. When there is cropland, there is the tillage where people can take the land and reverse. That's where we lost most of the soil organic carbon. But due to the area was mainly in pastures, there is not much change regarding the soil soil organic carbon. Yes, you can go next. Yes. Then finally, this is the compiled map where it shows where there is land degradation in the area due to climate change. I say due to climate change because the area already have proven to have drought. You can see in the red, there is land degradation. You can see the area in green. Most of the area in green, that's where the silvopastoralism have been implemented. That's where the trees have been introduced. Maybe I can share the experience. Introducing trees in pasture is a very, very challenging activity than in cropland, because you are introducing a tree where the grazing animal is going to graze that tree. The survival rate is very, very low. And the area, if you want to introduce trees, you have to introduce trees which are very, very, very adapting to the condition of drought. Mostly the indigenous trees, that's the trees that can survive there. So most of the area where silvopastoralism have been implemented, we can see a small portion of improvement of the land degradation in the area. We can see that the land degradation have been impacting almost 7,000 hectares. Yes, you can go next. So finally, what I've learned during this process, maybe this is where we can come up with mostly the idea. First of all, I've learned that climate change have led to the land degradation in the area for the last 22 years ago. And 38% of trees have been lost during the process. I have learned that savanna ecosystem is mostly vulnerable to the condition of climate change than maybe any other ecosystem, because in savanna there are already very few trees. That means the fertility also is already low. Then it is mostly affected by climate change. I've learned that the drivers of degradation are most overgrazing, that's one. The second one is expansion of settlement, and another one as unsustainable agriculture. When you say as unsustainable agriculture, this is where maybe people introduce tillage and other and sustainable practice. I have learned that silvopastoralism can be a key point in reversing land degradation. Maybe in Rwanda we don't have that high much of pasture, but coming back to the Kenya or other countries, this activity can mostly be beneficial. So coming to the conclusion, to respect the time, yes, during my process, I have learned regarding land degradation status by trying to understand how land degradation can be assessed. I have already showed the impact from land use, which is changing a lot. I've also showed the silvopastoralism effectiveness. And what can be recommended, Rwanda is in the process of developing the National Adaptation Plan. It will be very important to include those activities in National Adaptation Plan, which can reverse the wrong situation due to climate change. Moderator, I thank you. If there are more questions or specification, I would be happy to answer. Thank you.
Great. Can you thank our colleague, David? Thank you, David. You had 4 objectives. I want to know if for your studies you managed to achieve them and proud of the results. What is the key pressing issue from your funding, and what you can recommend to REMA? I know you are working with REMA, but I only to REMA, but for policymakers. Just quickly.
Yes. Quickly, the pressing issue that is there is the reverse use of land, which is complicated because the land is a savanna ecosystem. It is a natural ecosystem which is not prepared for settlement and other hard activity on the area. That's first. Second pressing issue is the level of land degradation. It is very, very increasing in the area. Maybe the solution regarding the recommendation to policymakers, I'm working at REMA also. I have already presented the output to REMA and also to you, not REMA only, because when we say environment, it's not about only REMA, it's all about people who are there living, interacting with nature. So first of all is to understand the importance of introducing trees in pastures. And of course, there was some rejection to farmers to say, no, we can't introduce trees in the area. And it was a very hard activity to implement. Maybe what is the recommendation? First of all, for policymaker is to introduce this activity in a national adaptation plan so that it can be highlighted and the importance of that activity should be strengthened. That's the very first. Second is to help farmers understanding the importance of introducing trees in pastures, which can be into awareness and also incentive. Also, REMA have introduced incentive to the farmers who have introduced already the trees by giving water dams in the pasture, in the paddles, and also we can do more awareness of that activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just from the audience, I know people who are curious to understand more or they have suggestion. Can I have maybe 2 questions from the audience? Anyone to contribute? 1, 2. Yes. Okay.
Thank you very much for good presentation and very interesting topic. The silvopastoralism is a good agriculture system, if I may say, in that ecosystem, because it's allowed to make few aggression on very fragile soil in semi-arid zone, very shallow soil death, and it's pity that farmers earlier 1994 have cutted all native trees, But when you look on improved lunches, there is a lot of acacia, natural trees, which have been there for so long. And while improving the lunch, they have been reducing the number, but not cutting everything from fuel. And of course, planting exotic trees, it's very hard on those conditions. But farmers, they are aware that if in their farm there's no trees, it's a big issue. Although it's too hard to grow already trees in a very busy lunches, if I may say. So they are not against. That maybe I wanted to advocate for them. And in land degradation, which always depend to land use systems, whereby open grazing and seasonal crops, this rotation, which is about to happen there, it's accelerated the degradation. But in your methodology, you have shown us how this land cover, land use, and the soil productivity was used to model your degradation level. But I didn't see how the climate parameters was introduced. Maybe you may elaborate a little bit to see if it comes really from the climate itself or from land use practice, because in some farmland, as I said, with very scarce fuel wood, they have been cutting everything. Even in agricultural land, they cut everything to allow mechanization. That is not the real reason, because a good farmer knows a certain number of trees in his farm is very important. Yes, the agriculture system, I may agree with you according to two parameters you have shown, but I didn't see how the climate factors was introduced and evaluate how much they contributed. Thank you.
Yeah, let's take another question. Maybe you answer both at the same time.
Thank you very much. My name is Brigitte. I have a question about what you think as the main reason why people are not aware of planting trees. Is it the type of tree species we are introducing, or is it that those tree species do not adapt the region? What do you think as the main reason for that? Thank you.
Okay, let's take the last one. Oh, please, just quickly, just fast.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Edovia Tufatanya Umngari from Chinese Academic Sciences, and I have two simple questions. He mentioned that he used some MODIS data, if I'm not mistaken, about remote sensing. So my question is about your land cover maps. Have you also used MODIS data? And the second one is also about the accuracy of those maps. Have you assessed the accuracy of the maps? If yes, or how much was the accuracy? Thank you.
The last
two.
Oh, maybe keeping time. Huh?
Thank you so much. My name is Gaspar Wanyiziri, and I would like to thank the presenter, and the topic is very interesting. However, as my colleague, Professor Elias has said, I didn't see some major indicators of climate change in his study. So the second concern is about land degradation. When you check very well two maps, he has presented two maps. One, I think in 2000 and then 2022. And when you check it very well, is it degradation or restoration? Because the situation was somehow stable. Thank you so much.
Okay, the last others we just discuss.
Thank you. My name is Wasel Ilian.
I would like to ask David, like, you have said that in that area in Nyagatare, they have soil organic carbon. I want to ask you, if you study the other parts of country, like another province which has less soil organic carbon, how do you recommend young researchers that are studying the how to increase carbon content in the soil so as to have soil which is rich in carbon? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. David, I think you captured all questions. You can just throw it.
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, it is true that in my presentation, I didn't really address more in detail regarding maybe the methodology. Maybe trying to answer some of the question. In the presentation, I didn't put much regarding the climate parameter with linkage with the situation on the ground to be sure that maybe what is happening, it is caused by climate change. First of all, what is happening from what I've been observed is relating to human activity, first of all, and climate change comes as something which is accelerating the condition. I didn't, in assessing land degradation itself, I didn't put some climate parameter because in my findings I saw that mostly the land degradation is relating to the human activity. But considering, maybe I didn't put, I didn't put some map showing the degradation, drought status and the rainfall status, but it is included in my assessment to show that this activity is caused by human activity and climate change relating to the condition of the area is increasing the, let me say, the impact of the activity. Yes. This is maybe I can explain. Regarding the data and accuracy, in land cover, because MODIS don't have high accuracy, I use maybe Sentinel, which is somehow for the land cover. MODIS was used for the land productivity assessment, but for the land cover itself, I use Sentinel, which is free and closer to be accurate regarding showing the land cover change in the area. The accuracy was high because I used 10 meter, and in the area, most of activity is clearly to be seen. There is no much confusion regarding the classification, whether the area there is a forest, whether there is a river or something. It was much clearer. Regarding the land degradation, I have produced 3 land degradation maps and combining them. For each factor, for land cover, I showed where there is land degradation regarding to that factor. For the land productivity, I also produced another land degradation map. And for soil organic map, I do the same. Then during combining, I can see the 3 factors, how much they have caused the land degradation. Because one factor can't show really the land degradation. You have to combine them, the 3 factors. Regarding another question from, I don't know if I skipped some, but for soil organic carbon. First of all, I can explain soil organic carbon are contributed to many factors. The first one is planting the trees. And what you see, the trees have the leaves, and when the leaves are going down, they contribute to organic matter. That's first. Second, it is through other practice like compost. Compost also can increase soil organic carbon. Third one of increasing soil organic carbon is also to maintain them in the soil, like avoiding tillage, or you can avoid or minimize, avoid maybe It can be much complicated. You can minimize to maintain the soil organic carbon in the soil. Maybe the recommendation for the researchers who understand soil organic carbon can maybe try to understand how much soil organic carbon in the soil, first of all, because we don't know the real status. Maybe some activity have been done at global level or continent level, but they underestimate the level of Rwanda specifically. Maybe those who are going to understand soil organic carbon can focus only to understand the quantity, for example, where the change have been introduced. They can focus on cropland area. That's where the soil organic carbon is mainly disturbed due to the activities. They can understand maybe where there is cropland, how much soil organic carbon is being disturbed. Maybe, I don't know if I tried to answer all of them.
I suggest maybe we had, because of time,
yes,
we had time also to be managed. I know there are additional questions, but you can just discuss during lunchtime or break time. Yeah, let's hear from our colleague also, Umuhoza. She's also presenting around the impact of climate change, but using some digital platform. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Joa Sophie Umuhoza, and I'm a student in mental health nursing at the University of Rwanda, and there are my colleague and under supervisor of our lecturer. And also we have conducted a project which is in early stage, which called EcoMama. It's a mental health digital platform that aims to help women to deal with psychological impact of climate change through using AI-powered chatbot. I'm honored to share this finding of exploring the consequence of climate change on mental health in Rwanda, a narrative review from vulnerable communities. Thank you so much for this kind of opportunity. We know that climate change, next slide please. We know that climate change is not only affecting environmental problem, but also a health of those who are living in most susceptible areas. Climate change leads to long-term shift in temperature and weather patterns as discussed by UN, and climate change is increasingly impacting the health of those who are living in vulnerable communities, both directly and indirectly. And as during 2020, WHO reports that the shortage of mental health workers, which leading to the increase of mental health disorders due to the lack of access to mental health care and the limited to the geographical areas to passing to the hospitals, which occupies 1 in 8 counted for mental health disorder increase. And these different risks come together and lead to devastating events which cause either emotional trauma or psychological change. Next slide. We know that Africa is among continents that are harming stories of the impact of climate change, and is due to its geographical equation and its economic situation. In sub-Saharan Africa, climate change contributes to 34% of the disabled adjusted life year, where mental health disorders occupies about 10 million of people, and climate-related DRAs contribute to 34%. And PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder increasingly during the disaster around 14 up to 34%, and an estimated population of 10 million. Yes, thank you. And we are going to bring together this motivation about these studies. As research rationale, mental health affects of mental health challenges are under-researched here in Rwanda, and particularly in those require a local exploration to understand this impact of climate change to mental health, and mostly focus on vulnerable communities such as women and those living in low resources settings. As aiming to exploring as primary objective, we aim to assess the consequence of climate change on Rwandan mental health, especially for those living for vulnerable community, and mainly for specific object to explore the mental health challenge faced by population in the rural community, especially those depending on agriculture, as here in Rwanda, 70% of farmers are focusing on agriculture, and to identify the quality coping strategies for those who are living with mental health disorders and those genocide survivors of 1994 against Tutsi here in Rwanda. During assessing these studies, we have used peer-reviewed studies, that is to make sure the accuracy of the data, view using sources PubMed, Scopus, Google Scholars, and such terms was using climate change, mental health, Rwanda community, global warming, rural areas, food science, security, and African methodology by exploring qualitative impact on mental health from different studies such as systematic review, meta-analysis review, case studies, and the great literatures. We focused on vulnerable group due to those are at higher risk of having this impact of climate change on mental health, and those was women and children were at higher risk, youth, genocide survivors, farmers, and those living in climate-prone areas like Northern Province and Western Province and Eastern Province here in Rwanda. As a key finding while we were exploring this narrative review, we have found that climate anxiety had a higher prevalence, whereas a growing mental health crisis among the youth, where under the sample of 10 million of people were aged 16 to 25 in 10 countries, and 84% were worried about this climate, and 45% daily affected due to this climate change, mainly extreme weather. And as the second most challenging question was PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, because we know that those living in a vulnerable community, while they are like weather events that are devastating their community, they are living in the area that are like having the stress that are linked to the loss of livelihoods, and those having the stress can lead to many problems, depression, PTSD, and suicide ideas. PTSD risk were at high risk, where was accounting 14 up to 34% after extreme weather, and suicide risk were increased at 0.7 up to 2.1% during heat weathers. Here in Rwanda, we have a Rwanda mental health gaps in form of mental health workers and in form of the access to mental health care, because we know that we are living in a community where is concerned with stigma and lack of awareness to the mental health care that allowed here in Rwanda. Affected population were 22%, approximately more than 3 million of people, and those living with disability with distress were occupies 40%, and mental health care workers are up to 1.2 per 100,000 population are taking mental health care. And here we used the image from Cambridge, where there was showing the interconnection between variables about geophysical change associated with changing climate, where the acute event like extreme weather event or will contribute to PTSD, depression, and anxiety, and also these acute events that are coming in different seasons contribute to economic and social stress, such as job loss, migration, and food insecurity. And there is also the chronic change, example, heat, drought, and decreased air quality that contribute to aggression, suicide, psychiatric admissions to, and we see that here in Rwanda we have many population who are attending mental health care. And as the recommendation including mental health in the climate adaptation plan must be a priority because, as I said earlier, here in Rwanda, climate change and mental health are still under researched, and more data are not available to ensure that disease can be taken in consideration, but also prioritizing support for vulnerable community, expand mental health services and awareness can be crucial and to make sure that it is a holistic approach that addresses those dual challenges. And developing digital health intervention addressing this dual challenge can be something that is crucial because it can lead to those in underserved community, and it can limit geographical problem that limit those who are going to access mental health care in different hospitals, including the vulnerable groups like women, young, youth, children, pregnant women, and the frontline care must be frontline care, and expanding desensitized and the mental health services, and even engage local leaders and reduce stigma can be something that can be crucial. But also without forgetting educating campaigns that addressing this mental health care and the intersection of climate change, and also increasing the research findings that are in this sector, addressing not only physical health impact, because here we have many research that shows climate change and physical health impact, but we've limited research on climate change and mental health. As conclusion, climate change has serious mental health consequences, and vulnerable groups are most at risk, and urgent policy and healthcare integration needed. Addressing this dual challenge require multidisciplinary approach and holistic approach to promote resilience, increasing mental health support, integrating community-based models, and even including research that addressing and how to mitigate and adapt to the impact of climate change as we are living in the world of changing and digitalization. Our narrative review is still ongoing. Thank you so much for this kind of attention and looking forward for your question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Muhoza. Just a quick question. Yes, and thanks for this research, which actually show the interaction or the relation between climate and health, in particular focusing on mental health. And yes, you give some recommendation, but just a quick one. Are you aware maybe what is being done to address this issue at national level even? And then if you are aware, what do you recommend more to be done? Just a reflection question.
Okay, thank you so much for the question. Yes, there is more that are going on, but what if all of us join hands together to raise the awareness? This can be not only focused on the government, but also as we are living in a community where our community members are struggling. And even not only government has to take this as solution for all only, but as we are living in a community, we have to make sure that we are the eyes of those who are struggling and integrate those services to ensure that it is holistic and it is not only focused for community government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see, yes. Oh, wow. How gonna manage this time actually? Yeah, but I think we still have time. Yeah, we can have questions. Yes, please, where to start? Someone can facilitate. Maybe, yeah, you can facilitate her by raising your hand, please. And then she can choose where to start.
Is it allowed to be biased?
Yeah?
Ladies first. Then Okay, thank you so much for your good presentation. I'm by the names of Miser Efrosine. So my question is about, you have told us that climate change is causing mental health. But I would like to know, did you consider the other factors that may cause mental health other than climate change? If not, why? Or if yes, why? So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. My name is Pelagie Uwiringiyimana. I would like to ask if climate ancient, did you make a research if can affect performance of students, because you have seen that in a group of youth between 16 years and 25 is more affected. Did you assess if climate ancient can cause impact in performance for students who are still in schools and universities? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My name is Leo Clevis Dushime Ange. I'm a student at the University of Rwanda, College of Science and Technology. I'm pursuing botany and conservation. First of all, I would like to appreciate Mrs. Diane for her great presentation and the good effort in doing research or doing a study on mental health and climate change. Of course, even today, we are being affected by heat stress. That is why they have installed air conditioners to reduce that heat stress even in this room. So I would like to ask you some questions. Starting from your presentation, you have said that you conducted data countrywide, right? Countrywide. But I would like to know the case study. Where have you conducted such data, if there is any case study? And the secondary, I would like to know, we know there is several natural phenomenon. I mean, different hazards, different, for instance, there is a flood, there is a hazard like just which causing different disasters, and just destroys building and make people affected mentally. So among those different phenomenon, which one cause extreme mental health? Means, for instance, if there's a flood, according to your ranking, which one cause a high mental health cases? All right, so thank you very much. I would like to have to hear from you. Thank you.
Let's maybe just quickly answer those 4 questions.
You have 2 more.
Yes, we will come back. Yes.
Okay.
Factor affecting other factor, I think performance, data collection location, and then also which phenomena. Just first.
Thank you so much for the question. First of all, mental health disorders are not caused by one single factor. It is a combination of many factors. And those, one of them are climate change, and mainly in my presentation, I have said about those living with mental health, existing mental health disorders, and those who are in trauma stress situations. So those combination can contribute to mental health disorders and can contribute to the everlasting of mental health disorders. And not only, when it is not only someone to have mental health disorders, even mental health problems are like those stresses, those anxiety, it cannot be reached to the mental health disorders, but it can cause, like, minimize your performance and our occupation in some ways. So that is why we have contributed to them, those understanding those psychological impacts that are related to climate change. Thank you. Second question is about performance. Actually, we didn't analyze how the performance is impacted due to the climate change, but it is possible. And about the case study, we have conducted as narrative review, and we have focused on reviewing the peer articles that have been reviewed by more researchers and seniors. So we have conducted with using PubMed Scholarps to understand this, and this is not concerned on case studies. And about the food, the phenomena that are contributing mostly on mental health disorders, it is a combination. Actually, it is a combination. For example, here in Rwanda, we know that the problem, like in 2020 and 2023, there was a heavy rain that caused more than 5,000 houses distracted, and even caused the death of more than 100 population to live the loss of lives. And those contribute to the mental health challenges that contribute to mental health disorders. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Another series of questions. Yes.
Thank you so much. My name is Gaspar. I think I would like to advise you, I think this is somehow a critical review. So if you are intending to go for the fieldwork, first of all, you have to choose a study area as one of parts of the email, someone from botany has said. You have to choose to select a location, mainly in the northern or western provinces for landslides, soil erosion, and floods, or in the eastern province for, and then you have to choose one climate-induced disaster, either landslide, flooding, or you can combine them, but it will be very difficult. Another is to assess to what extent local communities are vulnerable to those climate-induced disasters. And then there is an impact on local livelihoods. And after that impact on local livelihoods accelerate the problem of mental health. Thank you. It is just an advice. It's not a question as such.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. Appreciate your work. I was wondering whether there's been any look at the use of indigenous knowledge to enhance coping strategies, or whether the access to and promotion of indigenous knowledge as a coping strategy has been, part of the survey work. Similarly, I'm interested in knowing whether participation at the community level in any adaptation activities decreases the stress and decreases the chance of mental health illness. In terms of the recommendations you make for providing support, is it, you have ideas up there about telehealth and things like that, but what about participation and engagement in coping in, physical responses to climate change? Does that change people's mental health situation? A third point is that there's been several vulnerability studies done across the country recently, and it would be interesting to correlate the vulnerability studies with the mental health studies to see if there's anything that could be learned from that. And fourthly, I know Rwanda is doing a lot of effort to set up early warning systems. And do the early warning systems help people prepare for situations, and does that improve the mental health situation? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I just have only a very short question, which goes very much in the same direction like the other gray-haired gentleman behind me had. What are typical coping strategies in this case, dealing particularly with climate change and related stress? Thank you.
I'm not sure if she captured the question.
No.
It seems she didn't capture well the question.
Is it working? Now it's working. Okay. I had exactly the same question like the gentleman with the gray hair who has been speaking before me. So my question was very simple. What are typical coping strategies which deal with mentally health or let's say climate change related mental health challenges? Thank you.
Yeah, there is another hand, the last one. Maybe Bamba?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the presenter for sharing this nice piece of work. So I have two short questions. So the first question is, how do you make a firm link between mental health and climate change? So how do you do that link, okay? So I've seen that you said there's a number of persons who commit suicide during one disaster or the other. So did you see the number of people who commit suicide outside those disasters? So that's the first question. So the second thing is, I heard many times you said vulnerable groups are the more at risk. So what do you mean by vulnerable group? Is it those people who are vulnerable to climate change? Is that those people who have underlying health issues? Is that those people who actually have, let's say, accumulated stress from different climate impacts? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think Muhoza can respond, and then we'll go to the next presenter.
Okay, thank you so much for the question. Let me start for the last question about vulnerable groups. When we say vulnerable group, we was meaning those living in low resources settings. For example, those living in a rural area, and those living in climate affected areas. For example, those living in the high risk areas in Afan province and Western province. And again, when we say vulnerable group, we mean women. We know that women are mostly caregivers. They carry the responsibility of the home. Are those who going to fetch water, are going who understand the risk of food insecurity in their communities. So those maybe they can just not only have the impact of those living in that area, but also those caregiving responsibility that are burden from them. And also about children and pregnant women. For example, we know that children are still immature emotionally, physically, and mentally. So I'm not really understanding why the climate change is causing drought, causing flood, and many losses, many lives of men are losing, and they can't really understand how to cope with this. So that's why that's how mainly we focus on a vulnerable group. And again, about the link between mental health and the climate change, we know that climate change is, for example, let's say extreme weather events, like flood, drought, something like that. And those living in that area, for example, they have a garden that they plant their trees, their food, and something like that. And imagine that the rainfall come to put out of those plants they planted, and then how can we emotionally resist? How can they become able to cope with that? And those, when they are emotionally affected, behavior affected, and their cognitive are affected. And those cognitive changes, psychological well-being changes can contribute to either depression, either anxiety, and either chronic stress that can cause something like that. And come up with the typical coping strategy that I can say could command. First is about reforestation, as is the first one for the community, and even for the participation of the community. And other is mental health strategies, about coping strategy on stress management. For example, deep breathing, relaxation techniques, and even seeking support, professional support in the case of mental health challenges, and even getting being in trusted community where they can be one-on-one therapy, and even also having coping skills like taking deep breathing and even mindfulness techniques to make sure that they are strongly mentally and emotionally. And about participation of, yes, it's true that I didn't put the participation of the community, but actually it really matters. As community need to have to participate in combating with this problem. So to make sure that it is holistic, community participation is crucial. So as participation from community, they have to participate on being eye to eye and amplify voices for others who are struggling, even taking the first step to ensure that they are at front line of the care, and even minimize those land degradation like land degradation strategies they use, like those who emphasize in soil erosion by cutting all trees at the same time. So they have to make sure that their participation are not limited to increase of climate adaptation and the climate resilience in communities. And
yeah, thank you. I think Professor Gaspar was just advice, and that's most of the audience are recommending that it's good you did this literature review, but next step is actually to go in the field. Yeah, thank you very much. We can just thank you. And also I'm thanking the audience for this interaction. Next, let's hear also Placidi from Rwanda Polytechnic. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Good morning. So my name is Placidi Mukarugwiro. I'm a lecturer of mathematics at Rwanda Polytechnic, Kigali College. So today's topic presentation, it is impact of climate change on females' participation and their employment opportunities in agriculture sectors in Rwanda. So first of all, my research is proposed research. I'm not yet starting it. This is the first phase. It is planned research project. So agriculture containing count 30% of gross domestic production, and it creates a job to the 7% of the population where, sorry. How should I use this?
Can help you maybe from...
Can you help me? Okay. So I am saying that agriculture counts 30% of gross domestic production, where it creates a job to 7% of the population. And the women in agriculture occupied a higher places where they have percentage of 7% and 8% in agriculture sectors. As you can see the pictures there, it is showing us how the women occupied highest places in agriculture sectors compared to the man. So the women are having a largest occupation in agriculture sectors. So go to the next slide. So even if the woman has a great impact in agriculture sectors, but there is limited study, which means that there is not enough research has been conducted to show how the climate change have a great impact on females' participation and their employment opportunities in agriculture sectors. So the lack of that knowledge is hindering the processes to combat climate change in agriculture sectors. To means that due to the climate change alternate, the women used to have fear to participate in agriculture sectors in rural area. Go to the next slide, please. So what is the objective of my research? So the objective of my research is first to evaluate the impact of climate change on females' participation and their employment opportunities in agriculture sectors. So I will establish the gender-responsive strategies on women to to increase their employment opportunities in the time of climate change. So what will be the methodology that I will be using? First of all, I will focus on 4 agroecological zones in Rwanda, where I'll be selecting 4 districts in that 4 agroecological zone. So I will be using combining method, the mixed method, which is combining both qualitative data, both quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis, where quantitative analysis, I will be collecting the data, climate data. I will be analyzing those data in collaboration with the Rwanda Meteorological Agency. And the climate data, the weather data analysis will be using also in that 4 agroecological zone to determine weather pattern. So what parameter that I will be considering during my research? I'll be considering temperature trends such as maximum temperature, minimum temperature, and over time, I'll be also focus on climate weather, wind speed, and so on. It will be also combining, go to the methodology. So I will also focus on semi-structure interviews, where I will go on those 4 different districts and to make an interview on different participants by using sampling techniques which called purpose sampling. So I will use also focused group discussion, where I will make group discussion for each district and then gather all those information. So all climate data, I will be analyzing those data for quantitative data. I will be analyzing those data by using Python softwares, Alastata, where I will be focusing on statistical test, which is chi-square. As you know, that chi-square is using for to check the association between 2 categorical variables. For example, in my research, chi-square will be examining whether the climate change and employment opportunities versus man and versus woman. It will be also examining the woman's participation in agriculture varies by the regions, sectors, education, under the climate change adaptations. I will also using statistical test called t-test, where I know that t-test is using for comparing the mean. I will checking where there is significant difference between 2 categorical variables. So what I'm expecting to see in this, I will be expecting as expected results. I will be expecting to see the relationship between climate change and females' participation on agriculture sectors, or how will climate change affect the agricultural productivity, which means that the change in rainfall, change in temperature, used to affecting the crop yield production, which is affecting the planting season, soil health, and so on. Reducing the productivity, it leads to the lowest income, food insecurity, and also fuel availability job. So after that, as a conclusion, after understanding this impact of climate change on females' participation and their employment opportunities, it is an essential for development for common policies and deep understanding of the matter. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you much, Plasty. I just want to hear from the audience. Do you have some suggestion? Since this is a planned research that she intend to do, please let's provide observation, then a comment. Yes, I see some hands up. Yeah, great. Let's start by Professor Nyandwi.
Thank you very much. A quick comments, it's for you, your study to make a temporal scope for which period the agriculture and climate change impact, then look on employment. You should fix a given period. The climate trend itself, current situation and projections, you get it from literature, Meteo Rwanda and IPCC's publications, but linking it to agriculture and level of employment, I think the temporal scope, we know already the geographical scope is the whole country, but the temporal scope will be also very important for our study, and it will be very interesting. In expected results, if the climate is impacting negatively to agriculture, you may find men are leaving the land to their, and go search for more money outside their farm. That is an hypothesis you may work from. Because if it doesn't bring enough income, you found it's left to women and kids. Then men go somewhere else to search for more worth activities. So it's good that you are proposing also very strong mathematical test, which is it's application of math. Thank you.
Yes, someone to facilitate.
Thank you so much. I have one question. No, there are two questions combined. So my first question, so I'm wondering about why are you interested to conduct females' impact on climate change on females so in Rwanda? So I don't know that I haven't seen the district, your study area that you will be focusing on. So I'm wondering about, so if, for example, you choose, you are saying that you will work, your study area maybe they are in 4 districts, right? So if there are 4 districts, why have you chosen those 4 districts? What are the pushing factors? Is it because those females are more vulnerable to climate change in those districts? Or it is because, so maybe you are going to tell us more about that. So the second question that I want to know, it is about females' perception on climate change. Did you ever seen or read from different researchers about females' perception about climate change? Because if we are speaking about climate change, we are here in the room, but when you go in the field, practically in remote areas, specifically, even men, I'm not sure if they are more aware about climate change. So I needed to know why females, if you really know, if the females in those 4 districts, they are aware about climate change. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Let me answer one by one question.
Oh, you want to answer? Okay.
Yeah.
Just okay. Just comment on those 2 from Nyandu and the lady.
Thank you so much. You have said that why did I choose those 4 districts? Or it is because that when you are doing this research in agriculture sectors in Rwanda, you have to specify. You know that our country have ecological zone in north, east, west, east. So that to make a conclusion about my project, that I have to focus on those 4 districts for each ecological zone. Because when I considering like 2 districts, I can make the conclusion. Because I want to make a conclusion according to the or part of Rwanda, east, north, east, west, so that I will choose each district in each agroecological zone. And why females? So it is because females are mostly affected by, as I said that, for the beginning, I said that females are very dominated in agriculture sectors compared to the man. There is no gender in agriculture sectors. So I am choosing to do this research according for females, because females, they don't have job opportunities in all different areas. That's why.
Great. Of course, this, during your research, you should document this literature. It's a key. Someone reading maybe your article, your project, you should convince the rationale of choosing those areas as well as why women participation. Yes.
Thank you. Bernard, you said above that 80% of the population in agriculture are female. And your research is interested in looking how climate change is impacting the female in agriculture. I'm asking, do you think climate change is reducing the number of female participation in agriculture? That's my question.
Yes. So due to the climate change alternate, it will affecting the women whole life, which will be affecting their thinking, critical thinking, it will be affecting women.
Yes, just only, yes.
Okay.
You want to comment?
No, I just want to comment. This is not a question. I mean, based on the question she's raised, why females? So I think usually when we study about gender differentials, we shouldn't forget that gender is more not only about women, it's also about men and young people and all those things. So I think it will be good for you to consider men as well. So that look at, yeah, please don't differentiate us. We love you. So please just include men and women and compare and contrast in terms of productivity effect, in terms of participations and all those things. So probably that is the best approach to look at the gender differential effects of climate change.
Great. I think Plasdi, you are noting this suggestion, and then you will assess after. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. Alice, are we going to launch at 1? Oh. So, I'm suggesting this. Let's our colleague also present, and then we give ourselves 20 minutes, and then if we have time, we also add that suggestion to Placidi. Otherwise, Placidi, you have seen some people raising hands. You can approach them, they provide suggestion. Yeah. So, because this session was actually to take 1 hour, and now it's 1 hour and a half. But I'm happy that it's more interactive. Yeah. Great. Let's Doctor just present, and then if time is low, we come back to Placidi. Yeah.
Thank you. I think good afternoon or good morning. I'm happy I'm talking in between these young researchers. And I've been working research for the last 20 years. I'm an economist by profession, so I'll be talking about the economic impacts of climate change. So I'm not presenting a very specific research, but I'm presenting the results of a combination of different studies that we have been conducting, not only in Rwanda, but also across Africa, and that have been published last year in October as a book on the climate change situation in Africa. So probably you can visit our website and then you find that paper. So in this presentation, I will focus on conceptual as well as some empirical issues. Next. Yes, the motivation, why I'm interested to present here. And I mean, we have a lot of discussion about climate change and documentations. You find a lot of millions of publications and all these things. But despite all these publications and research, the full cost of climate change is not yet well captured. And because of so many reasons. One is that we usually mix the impact of climate change, which usually define as the rise in temperature, and the impact of extreme weather events. So evidence shows that there is no strong association between temperature rise and extreme weather events. And NASA is conducting a lot of studies and a lot of models they have developed. And of all the models, only 25% of the predictions show that there is a strong correlation between temperature rise and extreme weathers. The other 75% still, they didn't show any significant association between rising temperature and extreme weather events. So I think it's important usually to differentiate the impact of heat stress or rising temperature versus extreme weather events. That's one of the challenge we have. And the other one is we have so many impacts of climate change, environmental, economic, social, and all those things. So I think we have to also capture all those things. And also the victims are different. Some victims at the household levels, and some impacts at community levels, and some are at nations and mostly at global levels. Those issues are not yet differentiated. And some of the damage and the losses are very difficult to measure. I mean, yeah, my sister, she was trying to see the mental health effect, which you cannot monetize it. I mean, it's just human effect. And also those are things. The attribution effect, I think Bamba yesterday, he was talking about the attribution of, the impact for climate change is also another challenge. And there is also, from economic perspective, there is also a challenge of mixing costs of action and cost of inactions. Yeah, I mean, those, we are investing on adaptation, mitigation, those are cost of actions. Cost of inaction is just a cost that we lose because we are not doing enough and because the environment is changing or climate is changing. So this type of distinction are very, very critical when we do some impact evaluation of climate change. So in this present, I will try to just provide you some conceptual analysis, and then I'll try to mention some of the empirical results that we found both at continental level and in Rwanda. Next, please. Yes, these are the critical impacts. Basically, we can divide the impacts into three. The environmental damage, I think the loss of arable land, I think David was talking about it, and the biodiversity loss, and it was in the morning, and also the freshwater storage, rising sea levels, and all those things are environmental damage that we can see. And there are also socials, like social loss of lives and health that my sister was talking about it. And I have some figures here, the number of deaths because of climate change in Africa, Eastern Africa, Western Africa, and in some regions. So you see that the orange line is because of malaria. Malaria is becoming, again, a problem in Africa, and people are dying because of malaria because the environment is changing, the climate is changing. And also the school dropouts due to heat stress and loss of income. There are a lot of heat dropouts. And the performance, somebody was talking about the performance. I remember, I mean, last year, there was a little bit higher, temperature, heat, and all these things. And the school teachers, they were complaining that the students are sleeping and all these things, they are not performing well. And these things has to be documented, and it's a very clear indication. And also, there is an impact on migration, both internal and external. I think we did some study in Ethiopia. I'm from Ethiopia. And then we found that a very significant impact of climate change on migration, both internal migration from rural to urban and from international migration going up because of so many reasons and all these things. So this is something that I think we have to document and also understand very well. But more importantly for my topic is the economic damage. And basically, we can classify them into two, economic micro level and macro levels. At the micro level is a reduction in agricultural productivity, definitely reduction in yield and crop and livestock and all those productivities, and both in agriculture and non-agriculture sectors. And also labor productivity, heat stress, especially heat stress, has impact on labor productivity, not only agricultural labors, but also industrial labors, and all these things will be affected by that productivity. And income loss is very clear, and rising household expenditure. That's what we see. The food price is increasing worldwide, and then that created a lot of increasing expenditure at household levels. Entrepreneurship and informal sectors, especially in Africa, where most of the small enterprises are dependent on agriculture and dependent on natural resource, and all these things, they are also being affected, and all those things, at least theoretically. And at macro levels, the inflation, the price inflation, the rise, and the GDP impact on growth, and also employment effect and inequality, and that inequality increases. Because climate change is unfortunately affecting the lower income groups more severely than the high income groups. So that increases inequality, and that means increase in poverties. So these are theoretically the effect. But what are the factors that affect? I think according to the IPCC, and it's a well-known fact that the impact, the economic impact at least, depends on three things: exposure, how much we are exposed for the risk, and like in terms of climate change, which could be temperature rise, and also extreme events, and how we are exposed for those, and also the sensitivity, how sensitive is our economic activities. Like, for example, agriculture is more sensitive than industrial sectors, and rain-fed agriculture is more sensitive than irrigated agricultures, and all those things matters for the impact, the economic impact. And the adaptive capacity is also very critical. Broadly defined as in terms of absorptive capacity, or adjustive capacity, or transformative capacity. So this capacity, that's where, globally, climate change affects, almost everybody in the world, but the most affected and the most impacted are the ones in developing countries, because our adaptive capacity is very, very low. I will show you some examples. In terms of exposure, I think you can see that the other side, the one on the right side, the one on the right side is about the temperature, and the one on the left side, on the blue one, is on drought incidence in Africa. So if you just see temperature is rising, as just Bamba said yesterday, temperature is rising, but we don't see any significant incidence of extreme weather events like drought. This is for the last 20 years, and we developed some index. So almost all are the blue are. There is no significant drought that we observe for long terms. Because we are thinking about climate change, we do some long-term analysis. So this might be because of data problem, or this might be because these extreme events are because they are very natural. That happens as usual. So in any way, the conclusion we have is, in the data at least, we don't see any significant extreme events that we. And in terms of vulnerability, I think I have to admit that there is a recent estimation of vulnerability in Rwanda in 2025, but in 2021 and 2018, we did some vulnerability assessment. The good thing for our assessment, we don't collect separate data. We just use the data from the national statistics. The national statistics, they collect data, household data from every 3 years on this, call it this, food security and something data. So based on that data, it's easily possible to estimate the vulnerability index. And we estimated, and look at here, and the first one, the average at national was 0.43. It was in 2021. And if you compare it, with 2018, I think we see some reduction in vulnerability index in Rwanda. Look, the national, the Kigali is the one that's heavily reduced vulnerability, which is expected because it's a city with rising income. And also some southern and western province, they are doing good, but northern and eastern, they are also progressing, but not that much. And also you can see but the most important message from this table is that the main source of vulnerability is our lack of adaptive capacity. It's not really that much exposure. You can look at the exposure index, the sensitivity index, and also the adaptive index. So the adaptive index is very, very high. That's it's the same throughout the years. I didn't check this year, but it was the same in 2018, the same in 2021, and hopefully it's the same. It's also the same for many African countries. We did it for Senegal, we did it for Benin, we did it for Kenya, and we did it for Mali and all those countries. And in many countries, even if the numbers might be different, but the adaptive capacity is the critical challenge that we're facing in Africa. Next, please. And then the other impact that we looked at, I think I don't want to mention the methodology. The methodology we use to estimate the impact of climate change on agricultural productivity is a very complex model. We merged the climate model, the crop model, and the economic model. And by merging all these things, we try to estimate the impact of climate change on agricultural productivity. And then we compared 2015 with a baseline in 2005. So these are some of the data. So you see for different crops at worldwide and in Africa and some of the regions in Africa. So the general conclusion that we take from is the most affected crops in Africa are wheat and the potatoes. Look at the potato. Where is potato? Potato here, look, it's reduced by 16% and wheat by about 31%. Yield reduction by 2015. Those are the most affected. And maize and sorghum, I think Africa is better than the world in terms of being affected. Maize, for example, if you take maize, maize is 11%, but the world average is 12%. And sorghum, sorghum, the world will reduce by 2.4, but in Africa it's and no effect, there is no yield effect was observed for rice, groundnut, and soybeans. And we can say that these are crops that are really somehow reasonably stable against climate change. So our public investments and all those things should consider the different, the differential impacts of climate change on different crops. Next, please. And we did also, this is specific for Rwanda. Actually, for Rwanda, we use a different time horizon. We compare the baseline 2022 with that of 2013. And we have two scenarios, the business as usual scenario and the climate change scenarios. So I think you can look at the details, but the most affected crops in Rwanda are maize, roots, and vegetables. Coffee and tea. Unfortunately, these are strategic commodities, but they are highly being affected by the climate change. This is exactly the case because we have been doing some field surveys in some of the districts in Rwanda, and we discussed with the farmers, and the farmers are complaining, especially tea farmers, and they are saying that they are being affected by those things. And also less affected are fruits and nuts, and no effect, as I said, is rice and oil seeds are relatively more stable than the other commodities. Next, please. And then we'll look at also how climate change, the impact on agriculture can transfer to non-agricultural sectors. Because agriculture is the key sector in Rwanda and in many African countries. And we looked at how really the impact on climate change can transmit to non-agricultural sectors. We see that I think most of the sectors are affected, except few sectors like the mining sector, the manufacturing sector, and the chemicals and petroleum sectors. They are not very much affected. They are positive, as you see, the positive side. But the other side, for example, if you look at the service sector, is being reduced. The value added will be reduced by 2.4 percentage points compared to the business as usual. And also, we see a lot of impacts in different sectors. The public administration sector will also be significantly, because we did this, I don't know how many of you are economists, we use a computable general equilibrium models. So that model replicates the economy. And then we introduce a climate shock. And that climate shock brings like market change, employment change, and all those things. Because of those changes, the other sectors will also be affected. What we call is multiplier effects, and the backward and forward linkage of the economy is captured within the model. So this is how we can see it. In terms of, no, you can go. The macroeconomic effects, I think we also see how climate change can affect the macroeconomies in terms of GDP, value added employment, and household income, and household consumption, and all these things. These are technical indicators. I think I can't explain them, but I put them, their abbreviation down. So we see that when we compare with the business as usual, the GDP will decline by almost like 4.6%. And also the value addition, that is the value addition, processed products and all these things will also be, because the raw materials will be affected. Employment will decline by 3.7%. This is for Rwanda, and all other indicators. So those are very, disturbing, figures. And as the DDG said yesterday, and there was a study that showed that the climate change is affecting 1% of the GDP of Rwanda. That's why they established the climate change department and the REMA, and also they developed the climate strategy. But that impact has now grown up to 4.5%, which showed that that study was conducted by the Stockholm University. It was a long time, but this is more recent, and we did it last year, 2024. So, and also, we have to understand the cost of action and the cost of inactions. The cost of action, because climate change is a very complex subject and a very complex area of development. So, in terms of adaptation, for adaptation, I think the African Development Bank has estimated about 277 billion investment is required to reverse the impact of climate change in Africa every year. And this is a huge money and a huge cost. This is the cost of action. Imagine the cost of inaction. The cost, if you don't do this one, and the impact is much, much higher than this one. And also the other thing is the abatement cost. The abatement cost means the cost that we have to incur to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So we did also some exercise and estimation for Rwanda, and see that how much of achieving the NDC targets, which is the previous NDC, not the new one. The previous NDCs, how much that costs the economy in terms of reduction in different sectors and all these things. This shows the reduction in economy. By implementing and achieving those conditional and unconditional targets, and the economy will decline by this. This shows that, if we want to reduce climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, the global community and the global citizens has to compensate us for this reduction. At least, this is the implication. This is why we estimated, and then we want to help countries to have some figures for negotiation with the global partners and all those things. I think those are few figures I'm showing you. We have a lot more. Next, as a conclusion, I think exploring the impacts of climate change is essential for several reasons, as you know, for planning, negotiation, climate, global issues, and all these things. However, we must understand the complexity and the multiplicity of the damage and losses, and also their dependence on exposure, sensitivity, and vulnerability, adaptive capacity. In Africa, including in Rwanda, the impact is pronounced not by the widespread of exposure of climate change, but because our economy is very sensitive, and we don't have a very strong adaptive capacity. That's where we are suffering a lot. More than the other part of the planet. And because of the structure of the economies, a small reduction in crop and livestock productivity induces significant impact on non-farm efforts, sectors, and the macroeconomies. That's why we see them, because our economies are very much related to agriculture and natural resources. Then any small reduction in those sectors will have a very consequential effects within the economy. Therefore, I think Africa shouldn't retreat from climate action and sustainable development. You all are aware that what's happening at the global levels. So for Africa, we strongly say that it's not a luxury, it's not like a business, but it's an issue of survival. So we shouldn't retreat we shouldn't retreat from climate change actions, and we shouldn't retreat from the sustainable development that you have to advocate and you have to allocate enough resources to achieve those things. So those are the message I have, and thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Tess. Managing time is challenging because we have another session of poster. Just maybe to, just maybe the last one, bumper started as the first one, then the lady here, only two, others we can, please bear with me with the time. Yes, only two. Bama and the lady there. And then others we discuss during poster presentation. Okay?
Yeah, I was saying I would like to appreciate this excellent piece of work done by Gethau and its team at academia. So this is actually very important because often we forget that we look more into the social impact and then we forget the economic impact. So this is a key piece of work. Now I have a very important question for Gethau. For example, if you're looking at the economic impact of climate change, if we take this into the future and take our pathways, the only thing we put in the climate models are the greenhouse gases, which is fine. So in that sense, we don't need to do any attribution because our hypothesis is based on the fact that human activity is actually increasing these greenhouse gases for the future, all right, for the so-called SSP 8.5, SSP 2.4, 4.5, and so on. Now, for the historical, and that's where the tricky part is, for the historical, so how did you know that what you got, what you model in the historical is actually the impact of climate change? Because my feeling is that can just be natural variability. Thank you.
Great. The second and the last one, just.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Thank you very much for good presentation about the names of the Boha. Nemutabazi from University of Rwanda. My question is, we have sustainable development goals, and you know Rwanda. According to your research and your presentation, how do you understand by climate justice?
Yeah, great. I think he talked about also about lack of capacity. Do you mean skills or resources? I want to hear also more about the term lack of capacity. Is it lack of capacity for adaptation, skills or resources? Just then we close out. Yeah. Just you can take to respond this. Otherwise, we keep discussing during lunch in the presentation.
Bamba, thank you. I was struggling to capture because this light is disturbing me, even to listen. That's why I was trying to capture. Because how do you know the projected results? Are you comparing with realistic? Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
How did you? Yeah, so I was saying for the projections, no problem.
Okay.
Because when we do climate modeling, the only thing we put in the model as boundary forcing is greenhouse gases, okay, and air source and those things. But those are anthropogenic, okay, as hypotheses. So we know that what we will have in the future is purely anthropogenic climate change, okay? But now, for the historical, where you have a mix of natural variability and anthropogenic climate change, so we have those kind of things mixed. How do you do the impact attribution to make sure that actually what we're talking about is not the impact of weather and climate only, is actually climate change?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I mean, we do two types of comparisons. One is temporal comparison, for which attribution might be very, very difficult, as you said. If you are comparing the impact in 2010 and 2015, and there are so many, it's not only, I mean, like climate change that matters within these things. This is one comparison we do. But what we do is, in addition to that, we estimate the business as usual based on history. And we also induce some, what you call it, anthropogenic change. And then we introduce these things. So in this case, you have this panel of like over time and across scenarios. By doing these things, at least you can capture the attribution of climate change. Otherwise, simply comparing today and yesterday may not be really a realistic thing to do. But that is I mean, the way we try to attribute for climate change. I hope I answered, yes, thank you. And the other one about climate justice. Climate justice, yes, I think that's where I think we have been struggling a lot, and we're struggling a lot. At African Union, I think I didn't market my institution a little bit, Academia 2063. We are a Pan-African non-profit policy research organization, and our headquarters is here in Kigali, Rwanda, but we work for all across Africa and closely working with the African unions. And we have been advising the African unions to have one voice on climate. But it's not possible. I mean, you know, we are 54 or 55 countries in the continent, and they have different interests and different partners and different, I mean, so many things that you know in the real world. So that's where, unless you try to have one voice, you will not achieve this climate justice. Climate justice, we have to advocate it, and not only at micro levels, like within the community and all these things, but also at international levels. But in order to advocate those things, you need, I think, one climate voice. And I think everybody has to work toward that. Hopefully, I don't know, by the coming years and all those things. And currently, we have one strategy that we developed for African Union at African Union level on climate change, which is the first of its kind. And at least they have agreed, the head of states, they have agreed to do some actions. But in terms of negotiations and all the global engagement, I think we are not yet there. I think we need a new breed of leaders where they take it into consideration and try to, I mean, discuss with the global partners. I mean, climate change for me is a good opportunity. I mean, it's a challenge, but it's also a good opportunity for Africa because we can be heard. I mean, our voice will be important at global levels because climate change is an issue not only for Africa, but also all the people in this planet. So I think that's where we are lacking. Capacity, sorry for time. Capacity, when I say this adaptive capacity, and it's mainly about our economic capacity. Like, for example, if there is a shock, do you have enough saving? Do you have any insurance system? Do you have any, I mean, adaptive capacity, basically, we classify into the ability to absorb the shock you have to absorb. For example, if you have income, if you lose income and then you depend on your saved income, then this is absorptive capacity. The other one is adjusting capacity, or adjusting capacity means transform into life, for example, climate smart agriculture. Change the way we act. Like, for example, we are planting a conventional variety, but this time we have to be able to plant a variety that's resistant for heat and droughts and all those things. And also the other one is the transformative capacity. Transformative capacity means we have to have a capacity to diversify our income and maybe a little bit escape and move away from agriculture and engage on industries and all those things. So these are combination of capacities at household level, community level, and at national levels.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm sorry because of time. We also need to have a session about poster presentation. I urge you just have more discussion with our presenters. Just let us, all of us, thank them. And I think everyone has just take away message. Thank you very much, team. Yeah. Thank you also for the audience. Alice, can you guide us where?
Thank you very much. I would like to inform different researchers that has posted something there to go nearby the board so that they can explain to participants about their researches. We have different boards where you can post any burning question, any issue that will be addressed, to someone who want to address to that question. And also suggestions are welcomed. Don't forget also to post something about the board outside, but let us go directly to posters. Thank you. At 1 we will be on lunch. Thank you.